Welcome to RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network with your hostess, Jen Josie. Join like-minded real estate investors and accelerate your business towards greatness. You will hear step-by-step strategies for success, interviews with real estate rock stars, and we will dig deep into past projects where we bear it all, including the good, the bad, and some just plain ugly. So get excited. Here's the bestower of badassery herself, the real Jen Josie. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi, and welcome back. I'm Jen Josie, creator of RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network. Whoop, whoop. Whoop, whoop. Yes, on today's episode, we have a special guest that will be sharing one of their past projects. I will let you decide if it was good or bad or just plain ugly. But before we begin, here is today's badassery bestowment. And the topic is vision boards. Yep, it's that time of year when we start thinking about the new year that lies ahead. So, according to Psychology Today, mental practices like visualization can increase motivation, confidence, and even motor performance. In fact, one study, researchers found that in athletes, visualization was almost as effective as physical practice. Simply put, a vision board is a visual representation of your goals, typically on a poster board displaying images and words that you choose. For me, I started doing vision boards about 3 years ago. I find it crazy how much of it comes true. For example, at the end of last year, I put a picture of a husband and wife working together in their home office in hopes of my husband being able to quit his day job and work full-time with me in a renovation business. The universe had a different interpretation of that picture because while we truly spent several months this year working together in our home office, it was due to the Rona and not my husband leaving corporate America. However, other things I had on my vision board that came true were selling off some properties, international travel, a picture of my dream car that I now own, paying down a large chunk of debt, and losing some weight. Another picture I had on there was a stage microphone to represent more speaking gigs. Again, the Rona shut that shit down, so the universe presented me with the opportunity to start podcasting, something that was not even on my horizon, but has connected me with others in a totally awesome and unexpected way. Now, if you have never created a vision board, there are no rules. It's whatever makes sense to you. Some spend hours going through magazines, cutting out headlines and pictures that have meaning for them. Me personally, I simply go to Google Images and I search for photos that represent my goals. For example, I want to buy 2 more destination Airbnbs, one on the beach and one in the mountains on a lake. I found 2 images I liked, used my snipping tool, printed them, and slapped them on my board. This year, I printed off titles for several of the photos so the universe knows specifically what I'm visualizing. I put a picture of a podcast recording studio on my vision board, but also added the words 10,000 downloads, which is what's required to start monetizing my recordings. P.S. That's a big hint to all you listeners out there. Hit subscribe or download right now. Do it. Lastly, once you finish your vision board, it is important to display it in a spot where you'll see it several times a day. I keep my vision board directly across from my desk so I can see it just over the top of my laptop. It's a constant reminder of the awesome future I have chosen for the upcoming year. Now, on to today's episode. We have a dear friend of mine and total badass, not to mention she's also a superstar RAIN member. Whoop, whoop. Whoop, 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 whoop. I cannot wait to hear about the past projects she will be sharing with us. She has done some amazing things for her community. Welcome to the show, Pam Fisher. Yay!
Hello, Jen Josie. How are you, my friend?
Hey, I am so good. And by the way, when I was going through that intro, she just picked up another foster dog. Now, she had one before and it was a foster fail. And so she kept Sweet Angel. So now she has Sweet Ollie hanging around and he is just adorable. So
he is adorable. He's sat right here beside of me and he's getting used to being humanized because he's been in a kennel for a very long time.
Yeah.
So we're giving him lots of love.
So if you hear a dog make a noise, just get over it because, Pam is amazing for taking this puppy in. So Pam, give us a quick background on you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. First of all, Jen, I love your energy.
Yay.
Love your badassery. It's always
Love
good to be
you.
around you. So good times, good friends. I was not intending to be a real estate investor. I have a path that has, when I look back, I see my stepping stones, but it's interesting to see how I got here. I started out as an event planner, a project manager for large scale events that included, I don't know if anyone's heard of the Avon Breast Cancer 3-day, where people used to walk 26 miles, and then 13 miles. I was a volunteer coordinator for that at one point, and was responsible for 600 people that committed 3 days of their lives to support 3,000 walkers. I did lots of conferences for a while. I did some stuff with the Special Olympics World Games when they were here in Raleigh. Was assistant director of honored guest operations many moons ago. Was interesting to sort of hobnob with the big folks with that. And then at some point I went and did conferences for bankers. During 9/11, I was in DC area, and I wanted to have more of a practical skill that if another national crisis happened, I could walk up and say, I am da-da-da, and I could do something. So I made a decision to go back to school and become a nurse. Completely different, and was an ER nurse for several years, and then went into management, and then moved into consulting from there. So I was doing IT consulting and large scale projects as a program director, working directly with the CFOs. And the last project I did, I saved over $1.5 million. Wow. We trained 3,200 people in 30 days on this project, and we were on time with lots of challenges. So when I finished that, I decided, why not do something for you and apply those same skill sets? And took some time off and had a life-altering conversation on a plane with a gentleman who introduced me to the concept of RIAs, and kept questioning me on our 4-hour ride from San Diego to Houston on why I was scared of borrowing money, and that he wanted to die with as much debt as possible as long as it cash flows. So it was interesting to meet a stranger and literally sit there and go back and forth with him as though he was my grandfather about, well, why? But how? And he's like, stop being afraid of it. His goal was to die with at least $1.5 million in debt, because that would mean he had at least $40,000 in passive income a year, so, or more.
Wow.
So it was a great conversation. And by the time I got off that plane, I had already registered for TRIA here in the Raleigh-Durham area, which is Triangle Real Estate Investors Association. And
I was just going to say, explain to the listeners what a RIA is. It's a real estate investor association, and ours is called the Triangle Real Estate Investor Association here in the Raleigh area. So I'm sorry, keep going.
And that's how I met someone like Jen Josie and many other great investors. So that's kind of my long, brief story. I did have some experience in real estate because back in the day, about, 13, 14 years ago, I had a family member that asked me to buy a house for them. And I just kind of laughed and said, no, but I happened to go on Craigslist and looked when I realized what the rent in that rural area of North Carolina was. And there happened to be a 5-acre, 5-lot small mobile home park that showed up in that area. So I reached out to the gentleman, and not knowing what the heck I was doing, I convinced him to do owner financing with me, something that I didn't even know what it was, but I made it up on the spot with him, and he bid off on it and did it. And the beauty of it is that 5-trailer park cash flowed $800 from month 1. And it still cash flows today very nicely because it was paid off within 3 years. So it's that was my intro, and I had bought a couple more things, but at that time, my partner in life was not so interested in doing real estate, and I was traveling full time. So I paused, and now I have come back. Sam's partner at the moment, and he was a bit more risk evasive, if you will. So now,
good word.
So it's all good. I'm flying with my own colors now, so it's all good.
And you do this full time now, correct?
I do it full time and I love it.
And there is not much you can't do with that history. My goodness. I know I've come to you when I have just total brain farts on marketing ideas, and you are just a wealth of knowledge in that department. So I do appreciate having you as a friend for those moments. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
All right. So you grew up in North Carolina, though, correct?
I did. I'm a North Carolinian, grew up in a very small town called Robbins, North Carolina. We have two claims to fame. We have an astronaut from that area, Charles Brady, and we had John Edwards grew up in that area as well. I'm not sure.
Oh, wow.
We'll just leave that alone. So,
Okay.
yeah. Small town, North Carolina. So, yes.
Because I hear you talking about projects in different areas. I'm like, what, where, huh? You have stuff in Carthage. You're like all over the place. And I mean, I know like Raleigh, Durham. I mean, I know some small towns, but you are just like the queen of knowing all the small towns. So I love that. And I love how you go out and try to improve on some of those communities. But today we're going to talk about one project. And where is this project located, by the way?
This project is in Aberdeen, North Carolina, which is where my largest trailer park is. I just want to slide in. I do trailer parks. I do a little wholesaling. I do remodeling. And I also have Airbnbs. At one point, I had 13 Airbnbs in total. I've had Airbnbs for about 6 years before it was really the trend of having Airbnbs. So I wasn't as smart on the train to start doing education as some people were. But I have a long history of Airbnbs and successes and some learning experiences as well through there. But this particular project we're going to talk about is Aberdeen, North Carolina. I did direct marketing to find this particular one. And it was, I'm just going to move on into it unless you have other questions.
No, please.
Okay. I did direct marketing, and this lovely lady called. She had inherited the property.
And what direct marketing? You mean like mailers or?
I did a mailer. I drove by this and found it accidentally because you couldn't see the house. It was so grown up in front. But I found her address. I used at the time something called Land Glide, and I also used Deal Machine, both of those two. And I also could look it up on the property taxes in that area. But I sent her a letter. I actually had people handwriting letters at that time, and she responded. She called me back, and she had inherited the property about 9 years ago. It had been vacant for 3 years. I have a feeling it had been vacant for a lot longer than that based on the growth and the state of the property. And we went back and forth on the price. She wanted 10. I knew I wasn't paying 10. And in the end, she said, well, I had another person call me a couple of years ago and offer me 5. And I said, well, did they call you back? And she said, no. Hence, what a lot of wholesalers do is they don't follow up. And so I offered her $2,500 for this third of an acre in rural North Carolina, Aberdeen, North Carolina, and she took it.
Wow. And what year was the house built? How many bedrooms and baths? Tell us about the property itself.
It was not a large house. It was built in the 60s. I think it was a 64. It was a 3-bedroom, 1 bath, right at 800 square feet. So it was not a large house at all. The wisteria, and I'm going to say that word many times, wisteria, i.e. evil, stay away from it.
It is so invasive.
Oh, I had no idea, Jen. And
oh my God.
Honestly cost me a lot more on this project than I ever anticipated. So here's my one piece of advice when looking at a house. If there is wisteria that is covering everything, know that you're going to need someone to come in and dig it up by the root, which is not inexpensive to do. So that's one learning experience. There was wisteria everywhere. And to the point that even when we tried to get inside the house the first time, we were literally climbing through the vines, and the wisteria was covered in the entire front of the house to the point that if you were just riding by, you could not see the house. So I got this under contract for $2,500, and we closed within the time frame that we had said we were. The closing was non-complicated. She had inherited the property, hadn't been down here, obviously didn't want it. And
how did you finance it?
I paid the $2,500 and then ended up finding a hard money lender that wanted to do a project with me, and we ended up JVing on this project.
Okay.
So,
and that's joint venture, by the way.
Thank you. Joint venture, meaning They give money, I do the work, and we split the profit. That was the goal with this one. Sometimes a joint venture can be a different percentage depending on how you lay it out. You can do JVs with many things within real estate, I have learned, but this particular one was a 50-50 split with the lender providing the cash and me managing the work. Now, in the beginning, we thought that the profit was going to be significant on this property because, my goodness, I bought it for $2,500.
No kidding.
You can't buy land for $2,500, more or less the structure of a house. But there are some learning lessons here, which is why I chose this project specifically.
Okay.
So I will say that when you asked me to come up with a project, I believe that the golden nuggets come from our experiences of learning, and our job as people who support each other is not to always just brag on what we've done well.
Absolutely.
Sometimes is to provide information on what didn't go so well.
So what was that estimated ARV, that after repair value?
So we were assuming it was going to be around 110,000.
Nice.
And that was based on, there was not a lot of comps in this specific area of Aberdeen. There was a lot of new construction going in on about 4 miles away. But in this area, there was not the new construction and the reconstruction there. So there were a couple of things that were different in this neighborhood. There were a couple of habitat houses there as well. In hindsight, that may have been something to have given a little bit more consideration to than we did. But that's okay.
You're competing against new builds, though.
That's correct.
Okay.
So, but habitat houses as well right there. So,
and that's for lower socioeconomic folks.
yes.
So that was a lot of the people living in the area?
They were coming into that area because the houses were really cheap there, we think. So,
Okay.
which is understandable.
And again, forgive me for this because you know North Carolina so much better than I do. Where is Aberdeen in comparison to like a larger city?
Aberdeen is about an hour and 15 minutes from Raleigh.
Okay.
If you take US 1 south and head past Sanford and keep going.
You used like a directional term, south, like, you know, I'm Lewis and Clark. Just kidding.
The same way most of the time, Jim. I totally get that.
You go that way.
Yeah, go to Sanford and keep going.
Gotcha.
You'll literally hit the area of Aberdeen, Southern Pines. That area is known for Pinehurst, which is a big golf area.
Oh, okay.
Many of the people that work in the golf communities live in the small area that I was in there. So I bought it for $2,500, my estimates. So here's another learning experience. I had used a guy several times on projects with me. He was not a GC. He was a big talker, and he went in and said, "Oh, you can do all this for $30,000." And I asked him to break it out, and he's like, "Come on, Pam, you know me better than that, blah, blah, blah." Big mistake. We all know that that's a mistake. All of us know that's a mistake. But my mistake, trusting him.
But what did he say he could do for $30,000? Like what needed to be done to the property?
Everything. We basically touched every surface of this house, except for we even touched the framing on the exterior. We didn't touch the foundation. How's that?
Okay.
So we knew it needed a new roof. It had holes in it there. We knew it needed new flooring in some areas because the rain had been coming in through the holes in the roof. We were going to tear off the front porch, which was just completely dangerous. No way about it. You had the 3-bedroom structure. We had to redo wiring because somebody had come in and cut the copper out of the wiring. I mean, it needed everything, and we knew that going in. And I knew better when he said 30,000. And I looked at him and he said, "No, I can do it for 30. You know, with the resources we have, we can do it for 30. Well, ignorantly, I said, "Okay." I would never do that again, obviously. So we had an estimate of $30,000 initially with everything that we needed to do. And when I say everything needed to be done, everything needed to be done.
Gotcha.
So we have an estimated ARV of 110. We thought the estimated repairs were going to be around 30. So we got 32 into this, and we were hoping to make 110. Even if we went into, $45,000 for this project, we still would have been fine there. So I didn't have any qualms about that. Financing we talked about. I did a JV, and now if I had done a typical JV with this particular hard money lender, it would have been 12% and 2 points. So that's what this person typically does. But in the big picture, 12% on even $50,000, that's okay. I can deal with that. 2 points would have been 1,000, and then 12% on that would have been pennies in the big picture compared to what the potential of the profit was here.
So because it was a JV, you didn't have to pay the interest, correct?
That's correct. I didn't have to do any of that.
That's smart. That's super smart.
It was really good. So our projected timeline was, in theory, 3 months, but reality was 9 months. And there's many reasons for that. Yep. It was a horrible piece. I was distracted. I had 2 prominent family deaths during this time. And the gentleman that I trusted with those initial estimates ended up walking off another job and took some cash with them. And I didn't really have a strong backup plan. So tons of learning lessons there again. And that's why I'm choosing this project, is that because he was using subs that we had actually found together, and then he had the phone numbers and the contacts of all the subs, and I did not. Again, another nugget there. If you have subs, you need to have their contact information, not just giving them directly to whoever's working on your project as a project manager. Huge learning curve for me, because when he walked off my other job, I had no contact information for the folks that had come in and worked for us previously.
Oh my goodness.
And he stopped communicating with me because he knew that he was in the wrong and had taken some cash. So
let's stop here for a second though. And because this is so important, what have you changed now from knowing that this guy walked off with some of your cash? What do you do differently now on your projects avoid that?
I do everything differently now.
But specifically with contractors, let's just stick with that.
Sure. I get estimates in writing, flat out, period. I have their contact information, flat out, period. So even if I have a project manager or someone managing the project overall, they get that stuff, but it has to come to me in a copy. So instead of them telling me the total price is $50,000, if this part of it is going to be $4,000, I get that invoice that guesstimate invoice estimate for $4,000 with that person's contact information. Again, they may be managing everything, but I have all the contacts. I have all the estimates in writing myself now. And then typically I will pay the subs directly now versus he was paying them previously.
Gotcha.
And won't do that again unless it truly is a contractor. Now, again, talking numbers here, we thought this project was going to be right at that point where it's a GC versus a no GC. So he was not a GC and not licensed. So that was something that if I had a true GC on there, I know most GCs will manage the money themselves, and that's a different process, but I will always get subcontractor information and the breakdown of the numbers now. So
smart. So very smart.
Yes.
So it took you 9 months to complete this. How much did you end up spending?
Oh, Lord.
I'm a little scared to ask this question.
We spent closer to $60,000.
Okay, well, that's not bad.
Yeah. Plus a bit more. I'll tell you, one of the things that really surprised me was the wisteria. So we had the wisteria cut twice, and we had trees cut. But wisteria is so invasive that in the end, we had to pay an additional $4,000 very unexpectedly for somebody to come in and literally dig up the roots, like 6 inches down into it to get up the roots.
Oh my God.
And we did everything we thought we could, including putting poison on it. But in the end, that was the only way we could get it. And then after we did that, we had to go back through and, oh my goodness, plant grass. So those were very unexpected expenses that we had already paid for initially, that we had to come back through and pay for multiple times. So we spent around $6,000 on the yard very unexpectedly there. We had budgeted about $800. And oh my, that was quite a learning experience on that one.
And wisteria is actually very pretty. So describe it, just so when people are walking up to a property and they see it, they will know, they will listen. They'll say, oh, Pam was talking about that flower.
Yes.
So describe it.
pink or purple when in bloom and very fragrant. The best way I can describe it is its petals that look though they're in the shape of a grape, grapevine, as in the grapes that hang off that are so pretty. A lot of people will put them on pergolas and porches because it is beautiful and it's very fragrant. I had no concept as to how invasive of a plant it is, though. So,
but it's a vine.
It is a vine, and the vine can get huge, like, I don't know, a foot round in diameter or more. Like it can get huge. If you actually go to the Arboretum and here in Raleigh, you can see wisteria at different times and see the vines and what they've done with them. But it is something that I would never plant. Or, I mean, even if you plant it in a container, because of the way the seeds fly, I just wouldn't do it. Just
wow. Gotcha.
Beautiful, but no, thank you.
Good to know.
Another piece that was unexpected, and it's because, again, we're in North Carolina. At $2,500, I didn't get a termite inspection, right? Why would I, right? Because of the amount of rain that came through on the roof hole in the kitchen, when we went to start tearing out the walls, we had about 8 studs that just crumbled. So we had to go back through and do some banding work at the bottom, which is a piece that sits on the box frame of the house that sits on top of the foundation, basically. Not impossible, but we did have to do that.
So you replaced those pieces of wood?
Yes.
Around how much is that extra?
That was not horrible. That was probably about $400 more than what we expected, but not
it's labor intensive, though.
It is labor intensive.
Gotcha.
And then we knew that we had a ton of flooring, the subflooring that was messed up. Thankfully, our joists were fine. Our roof rafters, we knew were okay as well. So when we went to put the new roof on, that was not an issue. We didn't have a solid plan for what to do with our porch. We ended up building a really nice porch that covered the entire front porch, like a deck, basically, to cover the entire front of the house, which ended up really nice. Let's see, what were our other big ones? We had a septic tank in the back that we were no longer using because we now had city sewer attached. And there was questionability as to whether or not we had to actually fill that in or not. And in the end, we did not have to fill that in, which surprised me a little bit. Yeah. We had an issue with the plumbing because the pipe got broken at one point when somebody drove across it, but not the end of the world either for what we were doing. So other than the wisteria and then the some of the studs in the band being damaged from termite, there was nothing crazy that surprised us. We were putting in new windows. We were putting in we did everything to this house, literally plumbing, windows, HVAC, flooring. We had to change the electric location. It was in a bedroom previously, but because it was all brand new, we had to go and put it on in the hallway. And then we had to manage where the return for the HVAC was going because that wasn't there previously. So we had to create that in the kitchen facing into the hallway, though. So, yeah, it was a good project. It took a long time. We did get it finished in the end. Electricians, we had several that came out and they didn't want to touch the house. So it took us a while to find a good electrician because of that, because, the guy that had given me the initial estimates, he was just going to quote unquote repair the pieces, but because they had been cut in so many locations, no electrician would touch it unless they did the whole thing, which I understand and respect that now. But again, don't trust, verify.
Right, exactly.
Or trust but verify. So yeah, we touched everything on this house, including the ground, literally
6 inches under the ground.
6 inches under the ground. It was crazy.
All right. So you've completed the project now. So what did you, and because I know you mentioned before there were some new builds going on and some Habitat for Humanity projects. So what did you end up listing this property for?
So we did list it for 110, and our luck, it was right around the fun Rona. So we were hitting, that's not true. We published it on December the 21st I think is when we actually published it, right around the holiday. And we had several listings in the beginning pretty quickly. Now, I will go back and say a couple things. I have some fabulous folks that have worked with me a long time that ended up coming through and helping finish out this house because we had so many challenges with this lovely guy who started with us. And there was a decision made at some point to make it, we'll say, farmhouse industrial. Okay. Meaning we had a shiplap wall in there that had warm coats of, she would call it like honey and bee balm. And so she had the boards are differently painted. We have galvanized tin in one place in the kitchen. The hardware in the bathroom was cutesy kind of like old faucet handles and things like that. So it had
a lot
to
of
be
charm.
Charm. Yes,
Yes,
absolutely. That's a great way. When that was done, I didn't say yes or no. I said, use your creative talent, do what you want to do there. Hindsight is not everyone appreciates that.
correct.
We had several comments on the shiplap wall specifically that was not their style. The galvanized tin was not their style. So I do think that we could have probably sold it quicker and easier if we had not put those touches on. So again, that's when those lessons learned.
Yep.
Creativity outlets are not always in the right place at the right time. And that location was definitely not the right place for that. We had somebody come through and ask if they put an offer in, would we take out the shiplap wall? Of course, the answer was yes. But I guess just in the end, that was not their style. We also did a butcher block countertop, which is also something very different and not for everyone as well. So I need to clarify those things because hindsight is I do think that kind of played into the reason why we may have had a little delay and had to come down on price in the end as well. So we put it on the market December 20 something. We had like 9 showings pretty quickly, no offers though. So we pushed back. I think we did our first price reduction in late January, early February. And in the end, we sold it right around March the 30th. So it was on the market for about 4 months down there. And the final price that came in, it was a USDA loan for somebody coming through. And to make everything fit, it needed to be $90,000. So
Okay.
yeah, so that's where we ended up with that one is $90,000. And by the time we paid everything, the total profit split was around $14,000.
That's in the green.
It is in the green. It is in the green, which put my portion of that right at 7 and the JV right at 7. So obviously that was less than what he had expected as well, but he was very generous and kind and supportive through this process. And we acknowledge that probably was not the best way for him to go again, especially with the way this project happened, but he was still okay enough to take 7. At some point we thought it was going to be less of profit sharing on both sides. And, at that point I was willing to do whatever it could to make it right with him, obviously, because he was my lender and had believed in this process. But we were both happy enough with the 7,000 each that we took out of this one.
I still think it's fantastic. I mean, I've had projects where I was like, oh my God, if we have to pay one more month of interest, we are going to be in the red. So, I'll take $7,000. That is on the green side.
It is on the green side. And, hindsight, I had a lot going on. I didn't have a solid plan with this. I was the one who, when we evaluate anything, it's a matter of how do we grow with each project as well, right? What could we have done differently? And I was not on my A game. Again, I had multiple deaths going on that year that I just was emotionally in a unique place. But I should have added another delegation person to do the management of the project and take it on and make it happen. So
where were you staying while this was, are you close to Aberdeen or?
I was in Carthage at that time, which is another place I have. That was my first mobile home park I bought. So
okay.
I was staying in one of my double wides that I have down there in Carthage, which is close to where my family lives down in that area. So,
and how far is that from Aberdeen?
About 20 minutes from Aberdeen.
Okay. All right. Gotcha.
And then my primary trailer park is also in Aberdeen. So that was only 5 minutes away from where this project was. But I was back and forth down there. I was, at that time, I had several new Airbnbs I was setting up and was dealing with the trailer park as well. So I had multiple projects going on. and was pulled a little thinner than what I should have been at the time. But, in the end, we came through with the project. It really could have been a 3-month project versus a 9-month project, but we made it through, we made profit, and we'll do it differently next time.
And I think it's so important when you have projects like this, everything you take away from it. And my listeners are benefiting from everything that you've shared. And so it's so very important. Not everything is going to be a slam dunk, but you walked away with some cash on this.
Absolutely.
The person who bought it has a great place. They don't have any damn wisteria growing up in their shit. So,
That's right.
You have provided a safe home for someone. And I think it's fantastic. So bravo to you, my friend. Great job on that.
Thank you.
All right.
And again, let me say
yes.
this one more time. It's a reminder, because I think that when people do podcasts, they want to talk about the project that brought in $50,000, $100,000, $150,000. And I believe that there's reality and realistic pieces that we have to take out as investors and be real with people, because not every project is a home run.
Ever.
You've talked about that, Jen, about how you were worried about going into the red some months because of the holding costs. If I had a tremendous amount of down payment for this, or a purchase price for this house, I would not have made money. And nobody finds a house for $2,500. Let's just be clear on that.
That's correct.
Nobody finds that. And let me tell you, one of the things I did at the beginning of this one that I forgot is the JV deal. The way that I made it work with him too, is I did require that I get a small wholesale fee for that house. So up front, I got some money on this house, because you just can't find a house for $2,500. So I did get a $6,000 wholesale fee in the beginning of this project, so that I felt like we were on level ground. And thankfully, he agreed to it. On the flip side, because this person was also a realtor, my moneylender was a realtor, he got $1,000 for the listing of that as well. So that was how we balanced out, that I got $6,000 wholesale in the beginning, and then he got $1,000 for listing it. So when I look at it like that and remind myself, I brought in a little bit more than just the $7,000. So that's not bad. $13,000 for this project in total.
Absolutely. So thank you so very much for sharing that. I think that's going to help people when they make their decisions. They know that they don't have to go through a standard bank. You can do some creative financing. You can do JV deals, to definitely check out those contractors, and, people listening, you're going to be saving them. So thank you so very much for sharing that. Now, for the second part of the podcast, and because you are truly a badass, I like to do my badass acronym, and I have a question for each letter in the word badass. And the first one is book. What is a book that has made a huge difference in your life?
I'm going to be everyone else and say definitely the Rich Dad,
Bible.
Poor Dad. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is definitely one of those that has had a significant impact on me. I remember reading that the first time and was like, what? Hold on. And I read it again, and I read it again. And I've tried to give it to several people since then. Some want it, some don't. But just the concepts of learning an asset versus a true liability, whereas most people initially thought that their home was an asset, but in the end, it's a liability. So
Correct.
That's one.
Huge.
But the second one beyond that, which is not even real estate, is Brene Brown. I really appreciate Brene Brown and her teachings and her research. And she has one called Dare to Lead, which I think is absolutely stunning. And it's a reminder of us for what we do and how we all have our stuff in the background, but we also have an ability and almost a right to lead in some direction. So I appreciate her and her teachings, and we all have things in our background, as they say, baggage in general, but I think growing through that and moving forward in the right way is always beautiful in all of us. So I really appreciate Brene Brown.
Yeah, Brene Brown is a total badass. Hint,
oh, she is total badass.
Brene, if you're listening, we love you. All right,
We
so
love you.
the first A in badass is advice. What is the best piece of advice you have ever received? You've given our listeners some great advice, but what is some advice you received?
Don't be afraid of debt. I will go back to the gentleman on the plane that.
Yeah, who was that? Do you know his name?
I do, but I don't have it in front of me. He was from Texas.
Oh my
He had
goodness.
his own interesting story. You know, well, let me say this first, and I'll go back to that.
Okay.
So he was the one who said cash flow was the name of the game, right? And so the reason we got into that conversation as well is because I had done real estate transactions, but I had used my own money for everything at that point. And well, that runs out quickly, really
Yes.
quickly, and it stops you from moving forward. And so when he was telling me about he had 40 houses, and I'm like, but how? But how? But how? And he said, stop being afraid of money, stop being afraid of debt. And he's like, as long as it cash flows, for him, it was $300 a house. And in that area, he could easily get that. So what that means is that if he financed a home, and I'm just making up numbers for where he was, and he was able to finance it at $400 a month, these are small homes outside of a large area in Texas. If he could get rent for at least $750, then he was cash flowing in theory $300 by the time you take out taxes, insurance minimally there. So you finance it, you get it down lower, and then you rent it so that you have cash flow coming in every month. And for him, $300 was the amount he wanted each house to cash flow. Now, a lot of people talk about the 1% or 2% rule where it's a percentage of the purchase price. He didn't care about any of that. For him, it was just cash flow. Can I get $300 out of each house? And if he could, then that was his deal.
Perfect.
But he used other people's money. And then if you know about the BRRRR method, he didn't use that reference, but that's a bigger pockets reference of buy, rehab, rent, refi, and repeat. That's basically what he's saying. And then you get your money back, you put a mortgage on that house, and you go do the next one. So that was the best piece of advice.
Yeah. And when you buy them, you're paying it down, using their rent money to pay it down, keeping the extra, and it is only going to be paid off further down the road. So you're making more and more and more money off these rental projects. So,
but his was the best advice, because after that, I actually did two significant things in my world. One is I did a commercial loan on a remodel that I picked up. And then two is I ended up doing a commercial line of credit to buy my mobile home park and use that for the down payment. And honestly, if I had not had that conversation with him, I'm not sure I would have been able to know or even think through the process comfortably to do either one of those. I'm going to give one other piece here. Whenever we're both involved with TRIA, the Triangle Real Estate Investors Association. And when I was encouraged to apply for something they called Deal of the Year with my mobile home park and the owner financing I had set up with that, and then the plus commercial property I got with that. And when I did that, I did acknowledge him during my presentation, but I did reach out to him at that point and just wanted to say thank him. I did thank him and said, you literally changed my life with that conversation. And he responded back in true Texas style and said, good on you, basically. Keep going. So
I love that you kept in touch with him. I did not expect you to say that. So that is awesome.
Because he did. He literally changed my life with that one conversation on a plane. So you never know where the conversations can happen.
And now you can have that conversation with somebody else and change.
I do it all the time.
Yes, of course. All right. So the D in badass is drive. What drives you to be successful?
Freedom.
Yep.
Financial freedom, time freedom, travel freedom. So my dream and long-term goal is to have enough residual income that I can literally visit my international and national Airbnbs for a month at a time throughout the year. So have enough Airbnbs in different locations that I can literally go on business, quote unquote, and stay there for anywhere for 2 to 4 weeks. And then when I'm not traveling to my Airbnbs, I'm in an RV in Europe and Australia eventually. Playing
nice.
hard. So that's my drive.
With all your dogs.
With all my dogs.
And
yes.
The more that you pick up. Yes. All right. The second A in badass is aspiration. I am a goal setter. So what is a goal you are currently working on?
A goal I am currently working on is mobile home education and joint ventures. So I love my world of wobbly boxes, which is mobile homes.
Wobbly boxes.
Yes, wobbly boxes. And I am working on some education pieces and joint ventures within wobbly boxes. I'm doing my first JV right now with someone down in Florida. And in about 2 weeks from this podcast, so hopefully by the time most people are listening to it, I will have a website called wobblyboxes.com. And I will have wobbly boxes on Facebook, which is education and it's joint ventures. We will have some small versions of online Zoom education, not any extensive day trainings or anything, but more than likely 1 to 3 hours on a couple of different scenarios. And then, people are intimidated by what they don't know. And a lot of people are afraid or don't think that mobile homes are viable. So I know that they are viable. I think that you can easily get to cash freedom with mobile homes. So I was getting about 7 calls, texts, emails a week about these. And I realized there is definitely a need for that. And how do I make it a win-win for all of us? So wobblyboxes.com is where I'm heading with this. And stay tuned.
I am so excited for you. And I would like to promote it on the RAIN website as well.
Awesome.
If you allow me to do that. Yes, I will post it there so that other people can share in your badassery. So yes. Whoop, whoop. All right. Systems is our first S. What are systems you have in place to help you achieve success?
Sure. Well, an easy one that we're talking on right now is Zoom. I don't think we could survive right now without Zoom. I use many automated systems. One is, or just technology platforms, any.do. ANY.do. That's my general task list. I use Asana. I use REI Black Book at the moment for my customer database that is automated and great. I have a Carrot website. I
love Carrot. I have one on Carrot too.
Yeah, Carrot's really good.
So good.
Yes, carrot.com. It's a website that is a lead generation website
but it's specific for real estate investors.
Yeah, absolutely. So those are my main ones. I still do a lot of driving for dollars and wholesaling. So I'm a big fan of Deal Machine and Landglide. Landglide is a little different. A lot of people don't know about that one. I think that one's $10 a month, and you basically are connected directly with the taxes and the county website information. So you can click on it. And what I like about it is if I'm standing on the property and I click on it, I can see the layout of the land and I can actually walk it. And it shows me kind of where the property boundaries are. But there are times when I can't get information to pop up on Deal Machine and I can get it on Landglide. So I really like that one as well.
Excellent. Those are great ones. I'm familiar with all those. I was disappointed when they started charging me for Landglide, but
yes,
definitely tons of information on that one at your fingertips when you're standing in front of a house, which is so nice. All right.
Let me ask you, Jen, what other ones do you use beyond that?
Well,
a lot, I'm sure.
I have used them, but then now I am dependent on my VA pulling in leads. Like I am literally not doing that anymore. I don't do any driving for dollars. I still do some snail mail, but that's about the only system. And then, the Carrot lead. So
yeah. All right.
I'm lazy. I'm not like you. I'm not, out there pounding the pavement all the time. So, all right. The last S in badass is success. So what does success mean to you?
There's so many versions of success in my mind, not just one. I think that just like anything, it's multi-tiered. We want to get to the first level, what we call success. 2 years ago, my first big success was I had attended a mobile home university boot camp, and I had a goal to buy a mobile home park between 75 and 150 spaces within the next year. Well, I bought a 74 unit park within 6 months. So that was a huge success at that point for me. So I say that because, again, I think we hear people say, oh, it's to get $500,000 a year or so much, in income per month. And all that's great, but I think we all have to break them down into mini successes. No different than your vision board, that you're seeing that for what you're trying to do this year. So my current goal is to have a very specific set amount and residual income coming in that is profit on my side. And I'm not there yet. With several of my investments at this point, I have made the decision, for instance, in my trailer parks, for instead of me taking profit out now, that they're reinvesting into those parks. So I'm getting a better return long-term on this, so that, for instance, my park that I have 20 empty spaces, and I'd rather get those spaces filled up within the next 5 years to then be able to take $15,000 a month out of that park. So I have a goal that for 5 years, I don't pull money out of that, so that in the future I can pull money out of it.
So smart.
So my long-term goal would be to have about $100,000 a month. But I am nowhere near that at this time, which is why I'm hitting the pavement and working my butt off.
You are working your ass off.
I'd also honestly like to do motivational speaking at some point, which is why I think the Wobbly Boxes is a good start for that for me, and then expand it from there. I believe in empowerment of other people. I think there is an abundance out there of deals and support. And to me, that is part of success too, is sharing, encouraging, empowering. And a lot of women don't find that within this world. So I think that's part of my success as well, is empowering and networking, connecting with other like-minded people. Many people are wanting to get into this world. I can't tell you how many folks I meet that have paid extensive amounts of money for education, but they actually have not done deals.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. What is it they call it? Analysis paralysis.
Yep.
So if I'm able to help someone walk through that threshold and actually do a deal and find their own level of success, I think that's a huge part of what my success is as well.
Well, I know firsthand you are gifted at supporting others and inspiring others. So tell our listeners, besides the website, what is other ways that they can find you?
Absolutely.
Are you on Facebook?
Facebook. I'm working on Instagram at the moment. So Facebook is an easy way. I have several Facebook pages and websites. We're also using Fisher Management Group, which is my primary umbrella group, if you will. Fisher Management Group. There is a Facebook site for that one. And then Pam Fisher in Raleigh, North Carolina, otherwise. And then wobblyboxes.com is the other places you can find me, working through that marketing stuff and learning a ton about all the Instagram and web page, and not my forte yet, but working through that. So
I know it's a lot. So Pam, I just love you to pieces. Thank you so very much.
Yes, sister.
You are an inspiration to me, and I know you're going to be so successful in leading others. So thank you. And folks, that is all. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you on the next episode. Now go out there and share your badassery, and don't forget, make it a great day. Take care. Bye-bye. Whoop, whoop.
Thank you for listening to RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. If you need more badassery, you can follow Jen Josie by visiting therealjenjosie.com or become a member of RAIN by registering on rainmastermind.com.